Governments rarely default. They do something far quieter. And you always pay. Welcome to Willickson, where history isn't just remembered, it's used to understand how money, power, and systems quietly break. How governments reduce debt without calling it default. When most people hear the word default, they imagine collapse, empty banks, closed markets, angry crowds, a government admitting it cannot pay. But applied financial history shows something very different. Most governments never default loudly. They default quietly, not through announcements, but through mechanisms designed to avoid panic, preserve authority, and stretch obligations over time. And that is why debt almost never disappears. It just changes who carries it. But to cheat you, historically, default was obvious. A king ran out of gold, an empire missed payments, creditors lost everything. That kind of default destroyed trust instantly. Modern governments learned something critical from history. Open default ends power, quiet adjustment preserves it. So they evolved. Today, when governments face unsustainable debt, they have four primary tools. None of them are officially called default. All of them achieve the same outcome. The first tool is inflation. Inflation is the most elegant form of silent default. Debt is fixed in nominal terms. Money is not. When prices rise faster than interest costs, the real value of debt shrinks. Governments pay back what they owe, just in weaker currency. No missed payments, no legal default, no headlines. But creditors lose purchasing power. So do savers. History is filled with examples. Post-World War II, Britain used inflation to erase massive war debt. The United States did the same after the 1940s. Japan has relied on it for decades. Debt didn't vanish. It was diluted. The second tool is financial repression. This sounds technical, but the idea is simple. Governments push interest rates below inflation. They encourage or force institutions to hold government bonds. They restrict capital flows. Savers earn less than inflation. The state borrows cheaply. The gap transfers wealth silently from the public to the issuer. Again, no default declared. Yet the outcome is identical. Applied financial history shows that financial repression often follows crises. It is framed as stability. Low rates are described as supportive. Bond purchases as temporary. But over time, repression becomes structural. People adapt, and debt becomes manageable at a cost. The third tool is maturity extension. Instead of defaulting, governments stretch timelines. Short-term debt becomes long-term. Long-term becomes ultra-long. Payments are delayed into the future. This creates the illusion of sustainability. The problem hasn't been solved. It has been postponed. This is politically attractive. Future voters will deal with it. Future leaders will explain it. Today's system survives. The fourth tool is currency devaluation. This often overlaps with inflation, but it deserves separate attention. When governments borrow in their own currency, they control the unit of repayment. If the currency weakens internationally, foreign creditors absorb losses. Domestically, prices rise. Externally, debt becomes easier to service. Again, no default announcement, yet value is destroyed. These four tools form the modern default toolkit. They are legal, they are accepted, they are normalized, and they are rarely discussed openly. Why? Because default is political poison? Voters punish leaders who admit failure. Markets punish honesty faster than distortion. So governments choose the path that buys time. This creates a dangerous misunderstanding. People believe, if there was a default, we would know. History says, if there was a default, it would be quiet. Applied financial history shows that the cost of debt never disappears. It is redistributed, from creditors to governments, from savers to borrowers, from the future to the present. The system survives. Individuals adapt. This is why debt crises often feel invisible. Life continues. Markets function. Institutions remain. But purchasing power erodes. Opportunity narrows. Security weakens. This is also why people feel confused. They hear, the debt is under control. There is no default. The system is stable. Yet their lived experience tells a different story. That gap is not imagination. It is design. Modern default is not an event. It is a process. Slow enough to avoid revolt, broad enough to dilute blame, and effective enough to preserve authority. But understanding this changes how you see debt headlines. You stop asking, will there be a default? You start asking, who is paying right now? That question always has an answer. Applied financial history does not argue that governments are evil. It argues that incentives matter. Leaders choose survival over transparency. Systems choose continuity over correction. Debt is managed accordingly. But this doesn't mean collapse is guaranteed. It means costs are shifted. And when costs are shifted long enough, trust erodes. That erosion matters. The lesson is not to panic. The lesson is to observe. Watch inflation relative to rates. Watch who is forced to hold debt. Watch timelines stretch. These are not accidents. They are signals. Because governments rarely default loudly, they default in ways that feel normal, until one day people realize they've already paid. If you want to understand money beyond headlines, subscribe to Wheelikson.